Most people think discipline is about forcing yourself to do hard things, waking up at 5 a.m., grinding through pain, white-knuckling your way through the day until you collapse. And honestly, if that is what discipline looked like, I would have quit a long time ago, because I tried that version. The military-style morning routines, the extreme schedules, the just push through it mentality. And you know what happened? I lasted about 3 weeks, maybe 4. Then I burned out so hard I did not get off the couch for an entire weekend. So here is the thing. Discipline is not about suffering. It never was. The people who seem effortlessly disciplined, the ones who wake up early, work out, read, build things, stay consistent for years, they are not doing what you think they are doing. They are not fighting themselves every single day. They have built something different. They have developed specific skills that make discipline automatic. Skills that most people have never even heard of because they are too busy watching another motivational video about grinding harder. In this video, I am going to break down 7 of those skills. Not habits, not routines, skills. Things you can actually learn and practice that will rewire the way your brain approaches effort. And the part that might surprise you is that none of them feel like punishment. None of them require you to hate your mornings or starve yourself or scream at your reflection in the mirror. They feel almost easy, which is exactly why they work, because the discipline that lasts is the one you do not have to fight for. If you have been looking for a channel that talks about real systems for getting your life together, not motivational fluff, not hype, but actual strategies that work when you are alone and nobody is watching, then you are in the right place. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next one. Because every video on this channel is built to give you something you can use the same day you watch it. Let me start with something that might sound counterintuitive. Before I get into the 7 skills, I need you to understand why most people fail at discipline in the first place. And it is not because they are lazy. It is not because they lack willpower. It is because they are trying to use a resource that runs out. Willpower is a battery. It starts full in the morning and drains with every decision you make throughout the day. What to eat for breakfast. Whether to respond to that email now or later. Should I go to the gym or skip it just this once? Every single choice pulls from the same tank, and by the time evening hits, most people are running on empty. That is why you eat junk food at night. That is why you skip your evening study session. That is why you tell yourself you will start fresh tomorrow. You are not weak. You are depleted. The mistake is building your entire life around a depletable resource. That is like trying to run a business on a phone battery that you can never fully charge. At some point, it dies. And when it does, you feel like a failure. But the truth is, you were never supposed to rely on willpower alone. The people who sustain discipline for months and years have moved past willpower. They have built skills that operate on a different fuel source entirely. Skills that become easier with practice, not harder. Skills that generate energy instead of consuming it. And that is exactly what I am about to give you. Skill number 1, the ability to shrink the task. This might sound simple, but do not let that fool you. This is one of the most powerful mental tools you will ever develop. And almost nobody does it correctly. Here is the problem. When most people set a goal, they picture the finished product. They see the 6-pack abs, the completed manuscript, the successful business, the organized apartment, and then they look at where they are right now. And the gap between here and there is so massive, so overwhelming, that their brain does something very predictable. It freezes. This is not laziness. This is your brain's threat detection system activating. Your amygdala sees that enormous gap and interprets it as danger, too much effort, too much uncertainty, too much risk of failure, so it hits the emergency brake, and you sit on the couch scrolling your phone, not because you do not care, but because your brain is literally protecting you from what it perceives as a threat. The skill of shrinking the task is the antidote to this, and here is how it works. Instead of looking at the mountain, you look at the next step, not the next 10 steps, the next one, and you make that step so ridiculously small that your brain cannot possibly see it as a threat. You do not say, I am going to write my book today. You say, I am going to open the document. You do not say, I am going to work out for an hour. You say, I am going to put on my shoes. You do not say, I am going to organize my entire life. You say, I am going to clear one shelf. This is not about lowering your standards. This is about outsmarting your own psychology. Because here is what happens next. Once you start, momentum takes over. Once the document is open, you write a sentence, then a paragraph. Once the shoes are on, you walk to the gym. Then you do a set, then another. The hardest part of any task is the first 2 minutes. After that, your brain shifts from threat mode to flow mode. But you cannot skip those first 2 minutes. You cannot bypass the resistance. You have to shrink the task small enough to slip past it. The people who seem disciplined have mastered this. They do not sit around gathering motivation to do big things. They have trained themselves to start tiny and let momentum carry them. And after doing this hundreds of times, starting small becomes automatic. The resistance fades, not because they are tougher than you, because they found the door that was already open instead of trying to break down the wall. Let me give you a practical example. I use this every single morning with writing. My rule is simple. I do not have to write anything good. I do not have to write a certain number of words. I just have to open the file and type one sentence. That is it. One sentence. Most days, that one sentence turns into 3 paragraphs. Some days it turns into 2,000 words. And on the worst days, the days where I am exhausted or unfocused or just not feeling it, I write one sentence and close the file. And that still counts. Because I maintained the pattern, I kept the chain unbroken, and over time, that chain becomes so strong that breaking it feels harder than keeping it going. That is the real power of shrinking the task. It is not about doing less. It is about starting more. Because the person who starts every day, even small, will always outpace the person who waits for the perfect moment to start big. Here is something I want you to try right now. Think of the one thing you have been putting off. The thing that feels overwhelming. Now shrink it. What is the smallest possible version of starting that thing? Write it down. Not in your head, on paper or in your phone. Because the moment you define that tiny first step, you have already removed 80% of the resistance. The other 20% disappears the second you actually do it. Skill number 2, environmental architecture. This one changed everything for me, and I genuinely believe it is the most underrated discipline tool in existence. Here is the concept. Your environment is not neutral. It is either pushing you toward your goals or pulling you away from them. Every single object, every layout, every default in your physical and digital space is sending your brain a signal, and your brain is responding to those signals whether you are aware of it or not. Let me explain what I mean. If you keep your phone on your nightstand, you will check it first thing in the morning, not because you are addicted, because it is there. If you keep chips on your kitchen counter, you will eat them, not because you are weak, because they are visible. If your desk is covered in clutter, you will struggle to focus, not because you lack discipline, because your visual cortex is processing every single item on that desk, stealing cognitive resources from the task you are trying to do. This is not opinion, this is neuroscience. Your brain has a finite amount of processing power, and your environment determines how much of that power goes toward the things that matter versus the things that do not. Environmental architecture is the skill of designing your spaces so that the disciplined choice is the easiest choice. It is about removing friction from the things you want to do and adding friction to the things you do not. Here is what this looks like in practice. You want to read more? Put a book on your pillow every morning. When you go to bed, it is right there. The book is the default. You want to eat better? Do not keep junk food in your house. Do not rely on willpower to resist it. Remove it entirely. Make the healthy option the only option that does not require you to leave your home. You want to work out consistently? Sleep in your gym clothes. Put your shoes by the door. Have your gym bag packed the night before. Reduce every possible barrier between you and the action. You want to stop scrolling your phone at night? Put it in another room. Buy a $10 alarm clock. Make the phone physically inconvenient to reach. This is not about being extreme. This is about being strategic. The people who sustain discipline year after year do not have more willpower than you. They have engineered their environment so that willpower is rarely needed. I restructured my entire home office around this principle about 2 years ago, and the results were almost immediate. I removed everything from my desk except my laptop, a notebook, and a glass of water. I put my phone in a drawer in the other room during work hours. I set up my computer so that the first thing that opens when I turn it on is my writing app, not the browser, not email, not social media. My writing app. Within 1 week, my output doubled. Not because I suddenly became more talented or more disciplined, because I removed the obstacles. I stopped fighting my environment and started using it. And the beautiful thing about environmental architecture is that it compounds. Every small change you make reduces the number of decisions you have to make each day, and fewer decisions means more willpower preserved for the moments that actually require it. You are essentially building a system where the default path leads to productivity, and deviation requires deliberate effort. Their default path leads to distraction, and productivity requires deliberate effort. Flip that, and discipline becomes almost effortless. Now, if this idea of building systems instead of relying on willpower resonates with you, I actually put together something that goes much deeper than what I can cover in a single video. It is called the KMA method. 5 minutes a day, that is all it takes. And it is designed specifically for people who are tired of fighting themselves for control of their own mind. It gives you a simple daily framework for mental discipline and inner calm that works even on the days when you feel like doing absolutely nothing. Point your camera at the QR code on the screen right now if you want to check it out. But let us keep going, because the next skill is one that almost nobody talks about. Skill number 3, emotional decoupling. This is the skill that separates people who are disciplined for a few weeks from people who are disciplined for life. And it is something that took me years to understand. Here is the problem. Most people make decisions based on how they feel in the moment. If they feel motivated, they work. If they feel tired, they rest. If they feel anxious, they avoid. If they feel confident, they act. And this seems logical, right? Listen to your body, honor your feelings, do what feels right. Except here is what nobody tells you. Your feelings are not a reliable compass for action. Your feelings are data, not directives. They tell you something about your internal state, but they do not tell you what to do about it. Feeling tired does not mean you should skip the gym. It means your body is tired. You can still go. Feeling anxious does not mean you should avoid the presentation. It means your nervous system is activated. You can still present. Feeling unmotivated does not mean you should skip writing. It means your emotional state is low. You can still write. Emotional decoupling is the skill of separating what you feel from what you do. It is learning to observe your emotions without being controlled by them. You feel the tiredness, and you go anyway. You feel the anxiety, and you present anyway. You feel the resistance, and you start anyway. This does not mean ignoring your emotions. That is suppression, and it is unhealthy. Emotional decoupling is the opposite. It is fully acknowledging the emotion. I feel tired. I notice that, and I am going to the gym. It is giving the emotion space without giving it authority. Most people have never been taught this distinction. They think there are only 2 options. Either you obey the feeling, or you crush it. But there is a third option. You witness it. You sit with it. You let it exist. And then you choose your action independently of it. The way I practice this is almost embarrassingly simple. When I notice an emotion trying to steer me away from something I committed to doing, I say one sentence in my head. I feel this, and I am doing it anyway. That is it. No elaborate mental framework, no positive affirmation, no trying to change the emotion, just acknowledgement and action. I feel tired, and I am going to the gym. I feel anxious, and I am opening the email. I feel like quitting, and I am writing one more paragraph. Over time, this creates a separation between your emotional state and your behavioral state. You start to realize that you are not your feelings. You are the person who decides what to do with them. And that realization is one of the most liberating things a human being can experience, because it means you are never truly stuck. You might feel stuck, but feeling stuck and being stuck are 2 completely different things. The disciplined person knows this in their bones. They do not wait to feel ready. They act, and readiness follows. I want to share something personal here. There was a period in my life, about 3 years ago, where I was dealing with something heavy. I will not get into the details, but it was the kind of thing that makes you want to shut down, to close the blinds, cancel everything, and just stop. And honestly, part of me did want to stop, but I had been practicing emotional decoupling for long enough that I had a different reflex. Instead of listening to the feeling and shutting down, I acknowledged it. I said to myself, I feel like everything is falling apart, and I am going to show up today anyway. And I did. Not because I am tough, not because I have some kind of superhuman willpower, but because I had trained a skill that let me feel everything without being controlled by anything. That day, I did not produce my best work. I did not feel great, but I showed up. And showing up on the hardest days is what builds the kind of discipline that nothing can break. Because once you prove to yourself that you can act independently of your feelings, you become untouchable, not in an arrogant way, in a quiet, settled, unshakable way. You stop being a passenger in your own life. You start driving. Skill number 4, attention harvesting. Here is a question. How many hours do you actually have in a day? Most people would say 24, but that is the wrong answer. The real question is how many hours of focused attention do you have in a day? And for most people, the answer is shockingly low. Studies from cognitive science suggest that the average person has about 4 to 6 hours of peak cognitive performance per day. That is it. 4 to 6 hours where your brain is truly capable of deep, focused, creative work. Everything outside that window is maintenance, meetings, email, errands. The kind of stuff that needs to get done, but does not require your best thinking. The problem is that most people waste their peak hours on low-value activities. They check email first thing in the morning. They scroll social media during their sharpest mental window. They attend meetings during the time when their brain is primed for its most important work. And then they try to do their creative, strategic, high-value work in the afternoon, when their cognitive resources are already depleted. This is the equivalent of using premium fuel to idle in a parking lot and then trying to win a race on fumes. Attention harvesting is the skill of identifying your peak cognitive windows and ruthlessly protecting them for your most important work. It is about treating your attention like the scarce, non-renewable resource it actually is. Here is how you develop this skill. First, you need to identify your peak window. For most people, this is the first 2 to 4 hours after waking up, after the initial grogginess clears. But it varies. Some people peak in the late morning, some peak in the evening. You need to figure out your pattern. Spend 1 week tracking your energy and focus levels every 2 hours. Just write down a number from 1 to 10. After 7 days, you will see a clear pattern. The times where your focus is consistently highest, that is your peak window. Second, you protect that window with your life. No meetings during peak hours, no email, no phone calls, no quick favors. Your peak window is sacred. It is where your most important work happens. Everything else gets pushed to the lower energy hours. Third, you front-load your hardest task into that window, not your easiest task. Not the task that feels most urgent, the task that is most important and requires the most cognitive effort. Because if you do that task during your peak window, it gets done better and faster than it would at any other time. And once it is done, you have already won the day. Everything else is bonus. I have been doing this for over a year now, and the difference is staggering. My peak window is roughly 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. During those 4 hours, I do my most important creative work. Writing, strategic planning, problem solving. No exceptions. After 11, I switch to lower energy tasks. Emails, meetings, admin work, exercise. And the result is that I get more meaningful work done in 4 focused hours than I used to get done in 10 scattered hours. Not because I work harder, because I work smarter, because I stopped scattering my best cognitive resources across the entire day and started concentrating them where they matter most. Here is the thing most people miss about attention harvesting. It is not just about productivity, it is about energy. When you use your peak hours for peak work, you actually feel better at the end of the day. You feel accomplished instead of drained. You feel like you used your time well instead of wondering where it all went. And that feeling of accomplishment feeds back into discipline. It makes you want to do it again tomorrow. It creates a positive cycle instead of the negative one most people are trapped in. The negative cycle looks like this: scattered work, low output, guilt, stress, poor sleep, even more scattered work the next day. The positive cycle looks like this: focused work, high output, satisfaction, good energy, good sleep, focused work again, same number of hours, completely different results. The only difference is where you put your attention. Let me give you one more practical tip on this. If you work in an environment where you cannot control your schedule completely, where meetings get scheduled for you and interruptions are constant, here is what you do. You carve out even 90 minutes. That is all you need. 90 minutes of protected time, where your phone is off, your door is closed, or your headphones are in, and you are doing one task, just one. No multitasking, no switching. 90 minutes of single task focus will produce more output than most people generate in an entire workday. Because it is not about the quantity of time, it is about the quality of attention. There is a concept in performance science called deep work, and the research behind it shows something that most people refuse to accept. The average knowledge worker spends less than 2.5 hours per day in actual focused work. The rest is shallow activity, checking notifications, switching between tabs, half writing an email while half listening to a podcast, and every time you switch tasks, your brain pays a cost. It is called attention residue. When you stop working on task A to check your phone, and then go back to task A, part of your brain is still processing the phone. That residue lingers for 10 to 20 minutes, so every single interruption does not just cost you the time of the interruption itself, it costs you the recovery time afterward. This means that a 5-second glance at a notification can cost you 15 minutes of productive focus. When you do the math across an entire day, the result is devastating. The person who checks their phone 50 times a day is not losing 50 seconds. They are losing hours. Hours of their best cognitive performance, gone. Not because they are lazy, but because they never learned to harvest their attention. Once you see this, you cannot unsee it. And once you start protecting your peak window, you will wonder how you ever got anything done before. Skill number 5, friction auditing. This is the skill of systematically identifying and eliminating the invisible barriers that prevent you from being consistent. And I call them invisible because most people do not even know they are there. A friction point is anything that stands between you and the action you want to take. It can be physical, like having to drive 20 minutes to get to the gym. It can be digital, like needing to log in to 3 different apps before you can start working. It can be mental, like not knowing what you are going to do when you sit down to work. It can be social, like being in an environment where the people around you do not support your goals. Each friction point, on its own, seems trivial, but they compound. 1 friction point reduces your likelihood of acting by maybe 10%. 2 friction points, 20%. 3, 30. By the time you have 5 or 6 friction points between you and an action, the probability of you actually doing it is close to 0, and you will blame yourself. You will think you lack discipline, but the truth is, you have a friction problem, not a discipline problem. Friction auditing is the process of mapping out every single barrier between you and your target behaviors, and then systematically removing or reducing each one. Here is how you do it. Pick the one behavior you want to be more consistent with. Let us say it is working out in the morning. Now trace the entire chain from the moment you wake up to the moment you start exercising. What has to happen? You have to wake up. You have to get out of bed. You have to find your workout clothes. You have to change. You have to decide what workout to do. You have to get to the gym or set up your space. You have to warm up. You have to start. That is at least 8 steps, and each one is a potential friction point. Now look at each step and ask, how can I reduce or eliminate the friction here? Wake up. Set your alarm across the room so you have to physically get up. Workout clothes. Sleep in them or lay them out the night before. Decide on workout. Plan your workout the night before or follow a program that tells you exactly what to do. Get to gym. Choose a gym that is less than 10 minutes away or build a home setup. Warm up. Have a standard 3-minute warm-up that you always do, so there is no decision making. The goal is to create a path of least resistance toward the behavior you want. Remove every unnecessary decision. Eliminate every unnecessary step. Make the path so smooth that your body can practically sleepwalk through it. I did a full friction audit of my daily routine about a year ago, and I was shocked by how many hidden barriers I had built into my own life. My supplements were in a cabinet that required me to open 3 doors. My running shoes were in the back of my closet behind other shoes. My work files were scattered across 4 different apps with 4 different logins. My evening reading habit required me to go find my book, which was never in the same place. None of these seemed like big deals. But collectively, they were creating just enough friction to make me inconsistent. Once I moved the supplements to the counter, put the running shoes by the front door, consolidated my work into one app, and put a book on my nightstand, everything changed. Not dramatically, subtly, but consistently. The behaviors I wanted to do became the behaviors that happened naturally, because I removed the invisible walls between me and the actions that mattered. Here is the deeper lesson. Most people think consistency is about motivation. It is not. Consistency is about friction. The person who is consistent is not more motivated than you. They have less friction. They have designed their life so that the path to their goals is the path of least resistance. And that is a skill you can learn. Skill number 6, identity editing. This is the one that goes deepest. And honestly, this is the one that most personal development content gets completely wrong. Here is the conventional wisdom. To change your behavior, set goals. Write down what you want to achieve. Create a plan. Execute the plan. And if you fail, try harder. The problem with this approach is that it treats behavior change as a surface-level project. It is like trying to change the fruit on a tree by stapling new fruit to the branches. The fruit is the behavior, but behavior grows from identity. Who you believe you are determines what you do, not what you want to do, not what you plan to do, what you actually do, day after day, when no one is watching. If you believe you are a lazy person, you will act like a lazy person, no matter how many goals you set. If you believe you are someone who cannot stick to things, you will quit, no matter how detailed your plan is. If you believe you are not the type of person who exercises or reads or builds things, you will find a way to sabotage yourself, even if you have the perfect routine laid out. Identity editing is the skill of deliberately changing the story you tell yourself about who you are, not through affirmations, not through pretending, through evidence. Here is how it works. You start by identifying the identity you want, not the goal, the identity. Instead of "I want to lose weight," it becomes "I am a person who takes care of their body." Instead of "I want to read more," it becomes "I am a reader." Instead of "I want to be disciplined," it becomes "I am someone who follows through." Then you start collecting evidence. Every action you take that aligns with that identity becomes a vote for the new you. Every time you choose the salad over the pizza, that is a vote. Every time you open the book instead of the app, that is a vote. Every time you show up when you do not feel like it, that is a vote. And over time, those votes accumulate. They start to outweigh the old story. You stop seeing yourself as someone trying to be disciplined. You start seeing yourself as someone who is disciplined. And when that shift happens, everything changes. Because you are no longer fighting against your identity. You are acting in alignment with it. The gym is not a chore for someone who sees themselves as an athlete. Reading is not a task for someone who sees themselves as a learner. Consistency is not hard for someone who sees themselves as reliable. The behavior becomes an expression of who you are, not an obligation imposed on who you are trying to be. I want to be transparent about something. This shift does not happen overnight. It takes time. It takes hundreds of small votes before the new identity feels real. And there will be days when you backslide. Days when the old story feels louder than the new one. That is normal. The key is not perfection. The key is trend. As long as the trend is moving in the direction of the new identity, you are winning. Even if today was a bad day, even if this week was rough, if the overall trend is upward, the identity is shifting. Here is a practical exercise you can do right now. Write down one sentence that describes the identity you want to embody. I am a person who. Fill in the blank. Make it specific. Make it something you can see yourself becoming. Then, every night before bed, write down one thing you did that day that supports that identity. Just one thing, even if it was small. I am a person who takes care of their body. Today I went for a 15-minute walk. I am a reader. Today I read 3 pages before bed. I am someone who follows through. Today I finished the task I committed to, even though I did not feel like it. Over weeks and months, those entries become a body of evidence. And evidence is the only thing that changes belief. Not motivation, not inspiration, evidence. There is a concept in psychology called the self-consistency motive. It basically says that human beings have a deep, almost primal drive to act consistently with their self-image. Once you genuinely believe something about yourself, Your brain will work overtime to make your behavior match that belief. This is why identity editing is so powerful. You are not fighting your psychology, you are leveraging it. You are using your brain's own wiring to create lasting change. The discipline does not come from gritting your teeth. It comes from becoming the kind of person who does not need to grit their teeth. I have seen this play out in my own life in ways that still surprise me. Years ago, I could not write consistently. I would start projects and abandon them. I would write for a week, then disappear for a month. And every time I failed, I reinforced the story that I was not a writer, that I was someone who had ideas but could not execute. Then I started editing that identity. I stopped saying I want to write and started saying I am a writer. And I backed it up with tiny votes. 1 sentence a day, then 1 paragraph, then 1 page. And over about 4 months, something shifted. Writing stopped feeling like an obligation. It started feeling like something I just do, like brushing my teeth. I do not debate whether to brush my teeth. I just do it, because it is part of who I am. That is what identity editing does. It moves discipline from the conscious effort category to the automatic behavior category. And once it is automatic, it is permanent. Skill number 7, the debrief practice. This is the skill that ties everything together. And it is the one that gives you something that very few people in the personal development world talk about. It gives you data, real, personal, actionable data about your own behavior patterns. Here is the problem with most approaches to discipline. They are forward-looking. They focus on what you are going to do, the goals, the plans, the routines, but they almost never look backward. They never examine what actually happened, what worked, what did not, why you succeeded on Tuesday but failed on Thursday, why you were consistent for 3 weeks and then fell off. Without that backward look, you are flying blind. You are making the same mistakes over and over because you never took the time to understand why they happened. The debrief practice fixes this. It is a simple daily or weekly review where you examine your own behavior with curiosity instead of judgment. Not why am I such a failure, but what can I learn from this? The distinction matters more than you think. Judgment shuts down learning. Curiosity opens it up. When you judge yourself for missing a workout, your brain goes into defense mode. It makes excuses. It avoids the topic. It files it under I suck and moves on. Nothing is learned. Nothing changes. But when you approach the same situation with curiosity, something different happens. I missed my workout today. Interesting. What happened? I stayed up too late last night. Why? I was scrolling my phone in bed. Why? My phone was on my nightstand. What can I change? I can put my phone in the other room before bed. See what happened there? No judgment, no shame. Just a chain of curiosity that led to a concrete improvement. The friction audit and the environmental architecture we talked about earlier, those insights come from the debrief practice. When you regularly examine your own behavior, you start to see patterns. You notice that you always lose consistency on Wednesdays, because that is your most stressful day at work. You notice that you skip your morning routine when you go to bed after 11. You notice that you eat poorly when you skip lunch. These patterns are invisible when you are just living your life, but they become obvious when you take 5 minutes to review. Here is how I do my debrief. Every evening, I spend about 5 minutes with a notebook. I ask myself 3 questions. What did I commit to today? What did I actually do? What would I do differently? That is it. 3 questions, 5 minutes. No complex journaling system, no app, no spreadsheet, just 3 questions in a notebook. And the insights that come out of this practice are remarkable. Within a few weeks, you will know more about your own behavior patterns than most people learn in a lifetime. You will know your triggers, your weak points, your energy patterns, your optimal conditions for focus. And with that knowledge, you can make targeted adjustments instead of sweeping changes. You do not need to overhaul your entire life. You just need to tweak the specific things that are causing you to fall off. One more thing about the debrief practice. It has to be judgment-free. This is critical. If you turn your debrief into a self-criticism session, it will not work. You will start avoiding it. You will start lying to yourself about what happened, and eventually you will stop doing it altogether. The debrief is a scientific observation, not a moral evaluation. You are a researcher studying your own behavior. A researcher does not get angry at their data. They observe it, analyze it, and use it to improve the experiment. That is what you are doing. You are running an ongoing experiment called your life, and the debrief is where you review the data and refine the approach. I want to share something with you about how these 7 skills interact, because individually they are powerful, but together they become something else entirely. They become a self-reinforcing system. Think about it. You shrink the task to overcome resistance. Skill 1. You design your environment to make the task easy. Skill 2. You decouple from the emotions that try to pull you away. Skill 3. You place the task in your peak attention window. Skill 4. You eliminate the friction between you and the action. Skill 5. You edit your identity so the task aligns with who you are. Skill 6. And you debrief to catch any breakdowns and continuously improve. Skill 7. Each skill supports the others. Each one fills a gap that the others leave open. And together, they create a system that makes discipline feel less like a battle and more like a natural extension of how you live. This is why I built the KMA method. Because I realized that these skills need a daily practice to stay sharp. And 5 minutes a day of structured mental training is all it takes to keep these systems running. Think of it like maintenance for your mind. You would not expect your car to run smoothly without regular maintenance. Your brain is no different. The KMA method gives you that maintenance. 5 minutes a day, mental control, inner calm, and a quiet confidence that does not need to announce itself. If that sounds like something you need, point your camera at the QR code on the screen right now. But let me bring this back to the bigger picture, because I do not want you to walk away from this video thinking that discipline is about having the right tools. Tools help, systems help, skills help, but the foundation of all of it is a decision that you make once, and then make again every single day. The decision to be the person who shows up, not the person who talks about showing up, not the person who plans to show up, the person who actually does it. And here is the thing about that decision. It does not require motivation. It does not require confidence. It does not require certainty. It just requires action. Small, imperfect, consistent action every day. I want to tell you something that I think about often. There is a version of you that exists right now, in this moment, that you have not met yet. A version that wakes up without an alarm because their body knows the routine. A version that sits down to work without fighting resistance because the environment is designed and the identity is aligned. A version that handles setbacks without spiraling because they have the emotional tools to observe without reacting. A version that is not grinding through life but flowing through it, with purpose, with calm, with a quiet discipline that does not need to be announced. That version is not a fantasy. It is not reserved for people with better genetics, or more time, or more money. It is built, piece by piece, skill by skill, day by day, and the building starts with the smallest possible step. Open the document, put on the shoes, clear the shelf, shrink the task. Start today. Let me leave you with a challenge. Pick one of these 7 skills, just one, the one that resonated most, and practice it for the next 7 days. Not all of them, just one. Master one before you add another. Because discipline is not built by doing everything at once. It is built by doing one thing consistently until it becomes part of who you are. If this video changed the way you think about discipline, I want you to do something for me. Drop a comment and tell me which of the 7 skills hit the hardest for you. Not just great video. Tell me which skill you are going to practice this week and why. Because when you write it down and make it public, you are making a commitment, and commitments are the seeds of discipline. Also, if you know someone who is stuck in the willpower trap, someone who keeps trying to brute force their way to a better life and keeps burning out, share this video with them. Not because I need views, because they need to hear that there is a different way, a way that does not require suffering, a way that works with their brain instead of against it. Hit subscribe if you are building something quietly, if you are doing the work when no one is watching, if you believe that real change happens in silence, not in announcements. This channel is built for you. And if you are serious about taking your mental discipline to the next level, the KMA method is waiting. 5 minutes a day. That is all it costs. But what it gives back is something most people spend their entire lives searching for. Control over your own mind. Point your camera at the QR code on the screen, and I will see you in the next one.